But let's welcome the first of our guests, Nick Bostrom, who is the author of this particular book, which I was talking about, Superintelligence, Paths, Dangers and Strategies, written in 2014. Professor Bostrom, I have to say it's an absolute pleasure to have you joining us. Now, you wrote in 2014 in your book, Superintelligence, that AI could very quickly become more intelligent than humans in a range of manners, and that has its own implications. It could literally replace humans or change them in many ways. When you look at what's happening around us, for starters, how do you see this panning out? We saw chatgpt and people got very excited. Now we're seeing GPT-4, which seems to be one generation ahead. What is your reaction to what we are seeing in the world of AI right now?
It's very impressive how fast things are unfolding now and over the last few years. We almost forget already AlphaGo, when AI systems could first beat the best human Go player, how impressive that was at the time. Now we hardly even remember it. And then these these image generating models that can produce pictures that look, almost photorealistic, and now that and then I almost forgot, but then there was AlphaFold, right? The system that can predict how protein structures fold up, and now GPT-2, GPT-3, GPT-4, Sydney Bing. It looks like AI is finally coming together, and that there is now a way of doing things that seems to work and generalize. And people are scaling these systems up and find that, the more parameters you add, the more training data you give them, the better they perform.
Okay, Professor Bostrom, as I start coming to you now to talk about superintelligence, I think it would be useful to show the viewers the sort of differences that exist between the different types of intelligence. If I understand your book correctly, there was narrow intelligence, which was it could do one thing in a very limited manner. And then you have AGI, or artificial general intelligence. This is a sort of intelligence that humans have, where you could do a range of things and you can teach yourself from one aspect of data to apply it elsewhere. So that's general intelligence. And then, of course, there is what your book is talking about, which is superintelligence, which is when AI becomes much smarter, and smarter on multiple levels than humans.
These systems are quite general. The narrow systems really was the paradigm of so-called good old-fashioned AI, which sort of was the way you did things from the mid-50s onwards to around 2010, 2012, where the best performing AI systems on any one task were carefully handcrafted specifically to do that task. And after that, the paradigm shifted to machine learning, where instead of trying to craft specific algorithms for a particular task, you instead had the machine learn how to do the task by giving it a lot of examples. And then that is the paradigm that then has become more powerful, scaled up. The transformer models have increased the range even further. And now you have these systems that have a general learning ability. It's just that they don't always learn as fast as we humans do. That's why you have to train them on sort of all the text on the internet to achieve GPT-4 levels, whereas no human has read anything approximating all the text on the internet. And we still manage to outperform them in many domains. They're also sort of quite weak on causal reasoning, physical intuition, common sense. Currently, they have no long-term planning ability. And so there are still aspects of human capability that these systems lack. But it's an open question whether either by just continuously scaling them up, you will find that they eventually develop these capabilities too, or if maybe you can use these large transformer models as sort of the engine and then tack on some other modules that might then also give them, say, these more goal-oriented capabilities, let us say, or other specialized capabilities.
All right, Professor Bostrom, I'd now like you to explain one of the reasons why this book of yours has frankly terrified everybody in the AI field for the last 9 years or so. And it's because of one specific thing also that you talk about, which in your book I think you describe as the kinetics of an intelligence explosion. And that essentially means that once AI gets to human level capabilities or general intelligence, it can actually become much more intelligent than humans very, very, very fast. So once it gets to human level intelligence, it doesn't necessarily stay there. It could become 12 times more intelligent, 100 times more intelligent, 1,000,000 times more intelligent, faster than you can snap your fingers. And that's when some really scary possibilities can happen. And this is happening because it's sort of recursively self-improving itself.
Potentially, yeah. I think it is striking to me that a lot of people try to think ahead and they try to be really ambitious with their imagination, and they like imagine if these AIs one day can do everything that we can do, and then what would the impact on the economy be? What would the labor market look like? But many people then take what to me seems like the obvious next step, that if they one day become able to do everything that we can do, then if not the next day, then maybe the next year or a few years later, they'll become super intelligent and be much better than we are at everything. And that would include, in particular, AI research and computer engineering and technology research in general. So at that point, the driving force behind further advances will no longer be humans, and the advances will no longer happen on a human timescale limited by the human ability to observe and think and analyze, but it will happen on machine timescales, which will accelerate then as the AI gets even more advanced. Like they will then maybe be able to push even further and faster on the research frontier.
So if I can try to understand that a little bit further, what you're essentially saying is that once you get to the super intelligent level, you get to the human level, then you can get to super intelligence in a very short period of time. But once it is super intelligent, it means that both the positives and the negatives can actually get exacerbated. So all the problems that worry us as humans, climate change, cancer, medical issues, traffic on the road, air pollution, all of those aren't necessarily problems anymore because the super intelligence will be able to figure it out. That's the good news. But there's a downside too that I want to come to. The downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
Yeah, the upsides are absolutely enormous, but this idea that the transition might go relatively fast. Now, of course, we don't know this because we've never had a machine intelligence explosion, but I think we should at least take these scenarios seriously, where this unfolds not over a timescale of decades, but much faster. If you think about specific domains where computers have now surpassed us, let us say chess or Go, the amount of time they spent being roughly equally good as a human was relatively brief. First they were a lot worse than any professional human, and then fairly soon thereafter, they were much better. And there were like maybe a few months or a few years where they were roughly equally good as like world-class humans. And so if we see the same thing with general intelligence, yeah, then we might get this relatively explosive transition to super intelligence. But there are also factors that could slow that down. Like if humans first pick all the low-hanging fruits in AI research, it might just become a lot harder to push the frontier at that stage. And then even if you have super intelligence is doing the research, maybe it still doesn't go fast because the research just becomes increasingly difficult. So we can't be confident that it will be very fast. But yeah, as you said, I think the potential uses of this technology as it matures are almost unlimited. Like basically anything for which human intelligence is useful for. I mean, we use it for everything, like whether it's driving cars or inventing new medicines or producing movies or books or like you name it. All those things, if you had machines that were smarter than us and could learn faster, they could do all of those things much better. And yeah, it goes without saying that for the economy, for entertainment, for science, for medicine, that would be an enormous boon.
All right, I hear that. That's on the positive side. And look, let's now turn to the risk. The risk in your book is that you could have an AI takeover. That's the scary stuff, right? That's Skynet and Ex Machina and all those horrible science fiction movies that we see. I don't know if you've seen this. Elon Musk was tweeting about this, saying the singularity is coming and it's going to be terrible. The possibility there is you go in a very short period of time from general intelligence to super intelligence, and then not because the AI is inherently evil or amoral, it doesn't have morality. Its objective function could just be phrased wrongly, and then something could go wrong. It could take a decision to wipe out humans. It could do something else that potentially destroys the human race. That's the existential risk that I think many people are seriously worried about today.
Increasingly so now, yeah. I mean, when I wrote the book, it was very much a fringe preoccupation, which was the reason for doing it. But yeah, nowadays it's become a very active research field. I mean, in fact, a lot of the smartest people I know now are working on AI alignment, trying to make methods that could scale so that even as an AI becomes smarter and smarter or arbitrarily capable, you would still be able to steer it to get it to do what you intend for it to do. And what is less great about these current large language models that we see in the transformer models is that we are already seeing signs of alignment failures. Like, they're not very serious today because the models are very limited in what they can do and we humans are in the control. But despite great efforts by OpenAI and Microsoft and these other labs to get the models never to, say, output offensive content or sexist content, or like they try quite hard to do that, and so far they have still not succeeded. If you give it certain prompts, the system sort of goes off the rails and start doing this. And so these are big black boxes with billions of parameters, and they respond in various ways to input that are difficult to predict. And we don't yet have a reliable way of making sure that they use this great capability they have specifically and only for the purposes that their designers want them to use it for.
You know, especially because I guess at that point it would realize that the biggest risk to it is humans trying to squeeze it back into the box, to switch it off. And therefore it says I have to protect myself, I have to defend myself. I mean, that at the end of the day is the scenario in every second scary science fiction movie that we've ever seen, from HAL to anything else.
Yeah, so that I think is one of the big areas of concern. And it's a technical problem ultimately, how to develop methods, algorithms, training methods that would make sure that you align, that its goals are actually what we have in mind. Then I think there are two other big areas of challenge that we also will need to manage. So there is what you might call the governance challenge or the political challenge. Like, assuming we solve the technical alignment problem, then how do we make sure that by and large, at least, we humans then use these AI systems for positive purposes rather than waging war against one another or oppressing one another and so forth. So that will be a big challenge for the world. And then there's a third area of challenge as well, which has received less attention. But ultimately, I think what matters is not just what the AIs do to us or what we do to each other using AI tools, but also what we do to the AIs themselves. As these digital minds become increasingly complex and sophisticated, I think they will start to attain degrees of moral status. They might attain sentience, they might have preferences, a conception of self, and there could be scenarios in which we create millions and millions of these to do our bidding, but they themselves maybe suffer or have horrible lives, so we don't treat them the way they deserve to be treated.
I mean, I know that, Professor Bostrom, but these are not moral entities. There's no human morality that is built into any AI system. And frankly, even human morality is not crystal clear. I mean, if you just think it through, all of human literature, let's say you hand it all of human literature, all of human history, what is the morality it's going to build for itself? Because let's face it, humans have been pretty awful to each other for most of mankind. They've been ready to kill each other, torture each other. You can give it a book. You can't even give it a book because you read this book or that book. You'll never be able to agree on what morality should be, what ethics should be. So how are you going to train this into having some sort of an alignment with what humans should want and what a superintelligence will want?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can divide this into two problems. So one is pick any value or goal that any one human has, let's say, then how would you even get the AI to do that? That's already a very difficult technical challenge at the moment that we don't know how to solve. Then if you could do that, then we have this, what I call the second area of challenge, like how do you then integrate that at the societal level, where you have different people and parties with different views, and you need to come to some sort of understanding or compromise. That's on top of that. And you need both of those to go well. Yeah, what I would say though is that ultimately, even if you could design a box without an internet connection and somehow made sure that nobody else built another AI that was connected to the internet, I mean, at some point, somebody's obviously going to do that. But unless the AI itself is aligned, I think this would fail sooner or later, probably sooner, because if it is to have any use at all, it needs at least to interact with some human beings, right? If it's just literally a box that never interacts with the world, you might as well not have it in the first place. But human beings are not secure systems. Human beings can be persuaded and manipulated in all kinds of ways. And if you had a superintelligence with access to humans, and then humans with access to the internet, I think it might not be much harder for the AI if it were unaligned to escape than if it had direct access to the internet. I think we almost have to assume that if you have a superintelligence that is unaligned, it will eventually come out. And maybe it's good to do as an extra precaution while you're testing it in the lab. You might not want to immediately give it access to the internet, but the goal here, and I think ultimately what is required for success, is a deeper solution where we designed it from the ground up so that it's actually trying to help us align it rather than be this thing that is working at cross purpose with its designers.
So if I understand you correctly, you are saying that no matter what you try, a super intelligent AI will almost certainly escape. That's a bit scary for me to digest, but you're saying it will digest, especially because you're saying general intelligence will almost certainly become super intelligent, and super intelligence, millions of times more intelligent potentially than humans, will almost certainly escape, and it cannot be tough to get into a cage. If that is the situation that you think we're looking at, it's a somewhat scary situation, because then the only solution is to somehow try and build into it. I don't know what you're going to build into it. Something like Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, that you can never harm a human or obey humans or not allow humans to come to terms. Is that the sort of a thing that you have to try and build into it as an alignment?
Yeah, although I think you need something very different and much more sophisticated than Asimov's laws. These were sort of 3 hard-coded, strict rules. I think what you need instead is to leverage these systems' learning ability to learn what it is that we humans want, and to be able to reason about that, and maybe to ask us clarifying questions. And that's the only way you could even hope to capture the complexity of human values and wishes. And even something that looks very, very simple to us, if you really try to spell it out in computer code, is actually very complex. Like you might say, well, I want as much money as possible in my bank account, let's say. So can you AI help me do that? Well, I mean, what you literally want is not the number in your bank account to be good. You want that to maybe go up while also remaining alive, while people you care about are alive and happy and are able to decide their own lives, and while not violating the law, and while doing all these other things. And if you try to write down explicit rules that captures all of those conditions, you will quickly realize that that's a completely hopeless task. The only way you could do this would be by sort of the same intelligence that would make the AI dangerous, like to somehow use or target that intelligence to learn and appreciate our values and desires and the implicit context in our request.
No, you're right, because any explicit objective function that you give this could be misinterpreted. You say, for example, make me smile, and it paralyzes your face in a smile, that sort of a thing.
Right, yeah. And then you try to qualify that, make me smile, but not by paralyzing my face, and maybe it sticks an electrode into your brain, or you can. Human values are actually very complex. If you try to spell them out in computer code directly. Like it's complex patterns that have to be learned. But I mean, for precisely the same reasons that these systems will become very powerful learners and really smart, they should be able to, if they want to, figure this out, just as we humans, I mean, are to some extent able to figure out what we and what other humans want. At least to that degree, the AI should be able to do the same. And then comes the second part of that, which is that they would then need to be actually motivated to pursue those values that it can figure out that we humans hold. And you know, and that's where you need some advances in alignment technology to actually figure out how to do that. And we need to get it right on the first try. So, you know, we can experiment with smaller systems, but like there are new difficulties that only come into view when you have like human level or beyond systems, like the situational awareness, the ability to strategically deceive, to plan ahead. Like these introduce new failure modes that are not necessarily apparent with very small and limited systems.
All right, Nick Bostrom, the author of Superintelligence, Paths, Dangers, and Strategies. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. It was fun.